I'm not a guitar nerd, I'm not necessarily a rig nerd. I'm none of these things. I'm just an artist, I'm a musician. You know? I'm a music nerd. I adore music. What's up, y'all? This is Marcin, and I'm here to answer some questions with Daddario. I'm a polite, classical boy at heart. I started playing when I was 10 years old. I told this story many, many times. It was a complete accident. But really, the main thing that I remember from the very early stages is that it was the first time when I felt like I was good at anything, you know? Like everything else I was doing, I was just an average kid. And my father would send me to all sorts of, like activities just to do. And then when I started playing guitar, again, by complete accident, it was just almost like, it was just organic, There was no one had to tell me to do it or like how long to practice or anything. It was just a very natural and smooth kind of relationship. I felt a bit limited by the amount of tradition in classical music, and as you develop as a guitar player, you notice that the improvements that you do are tiny, they're minute, It came to the point where like the type of gel that I would use or wouldn't use on my nail would be the thing to improve for the competition, or the angle of playing. You can hear the difference. Hey, the Daddario strings, you hear every difference, man. So these things, which obviously they're nice to care about, but they're a bit mathematical, right? They're too rigid for me. So eventually I was growing a little further and further apart from classical, and I started playing flamenco music, which is sick. I met a Spanish player called Carlos Piñana. Phenomenal player. He was a professor at a university in Valencia, so pretty big fish, university professor. And I met him when I was a tween, I was a young kid, and I saw him play, and it was this like classically everyone plays like this, and there are these like they do these like this like facial expression thing, and they just play like that for an hour. That's a classical concert. I was so bored watching that, and then I saw him at some workshops, and the guy was like moving around, was like playing all of the rasgueado stuff, and like moving around and everything. It was like so sick. I wanted to be like him, So I went to his class. I saw him play. Then I played for him just some classical stuff. I didn't know what else to play, and I guess he saw something. I don't know what he saw, but he really encouraged me to learn flamenco, and he didn't give it to me. I bought it. I bought his book, the sheet music book. Then I parted ways with him for a year, and I was just practicing on my own. The whole year I was practicing flamenco without any teacher or any guidance, which is not a great thing to do. But I was doing it, man. I was like really going hard, and I learned this farruca is a type of dance in Spain. I learned this whole farruca that he wrote, and the next year at the workshops I played it for him, and he went nuts, man. He loved it. I remember it. So now I got a teacher who was teaching me from Spain through Skype. Back then Skype was a big thing. Look at me, how old I am back then. It's a weird way to put it, but I'm not Spanish, right? So playing traditional Spanish music felt a bit like cosplay almost, even though it's not, but it felt like it wasn't something from within. It was more just a fun thing I was learning. And when I picked up the acoustic and began experimenting, that was really the big change for me. Performance is more than just the sonic experience, This is just one aspect of a live show, but the visual part is so important, and even for people where you wouldn't necessarily expect it, like if you talk about someone like Andrea Bocelli, you can there's always a vibe that a person has, an aura that a person has on stage. And I just felt that in classical music, few people hit that. I'm not saying no one does, obviously they do. But especially in classical guitar, it's just a very stagnant genre, and flamenco is not, man. All these guys are like badass, you know. They're just fiery and kind of it just looks good, you know. And like you see the flamenquitas dancing, it just looks fantastic. So I just started to understand that performing is more than just playing the right notes, you know. Here are the nails. That's the money shot that everyone asks for. Man, this is so funny that my nails have become this point of conversation whenever I do an interview. The left hand is obviously normal, yeah, because it needs to be able to tap and to play like any guitar player. But I'm a true enemy of the pick. I don't use a pick ever. I don't need a pick. Even if I play electric, I'm not gonna use a pick, man. Why do I need a pick if I have 5 picks right here on this hand? And this is something that comes very much from classical, very much from flamenco. No self-respecting classical player is going to play with a pick, man. That would be, dude, I can't even imagine what that would look like. No, I'm not using a pick. I'm never using a pick, man. Same with flamenco. Like, how am I gonna play something like you know, like something like that? It's a weird tuning to do this in, but anyway, like if you're doing rasgueado, or even this this sort of rasgueado. How am I using a pick and doing that? It's the most limiting thing in the world, putting something here in those. Look, let me make a pick right now, be behind my back. Oh, I got a pick right here, check this out. Oh my god, I can pick now. How am I doing that? Where's the pick? It's the nails, dude. Sorry, I got heated. My dad always wanted me and my brother to learn languages, like learn English especially at a young age, because it helps in life. And I think because of that, he gave me a PC, like a computer, pretty early. I think I was like around 10, around the same age I started playing guitar. I got a computer from my dad. And I was only using my computer to learn English and using like English websites. And lo and behold, because I was learning guitar, I started to use the internet to like the global internet, I mean like, you know, American or British or whatever. So I'm finding all of these weird genres and weird players who wouldn't necessarily be the typical guitar heroes. Like they wouldn't be the people who you would look at cover of a magazine. They're not the sort of influences that I had at a young age. And that's also how I found percussive guitar, is through YouTube, through internet, because I was such an internet kid at that time. And at the very beginnings of YouTube, people like, what was this thing called? Candy Rat Records. Bunch of players from there, like Andy McKee or Kaylin Graham, or even Mike Doss, you know, at some point. A lot of these people came through Candy Rat, and I was watching them like foaming at the mouth, man. I was like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. And that was one influence. The other influence was just the music I was listening to. And I was listening to a lot of like rap at that point, like 50 Cent or something, you know. I was listening to dad metal, because my dad used to love, I still loves heavy music, so I would be listening to like Metallica, you know. I would listen to Bullet for My Valentine is a band. I never mentioned it, but my dad used to love that band. He played it all the time in the car. A lot of like cool, you know, metalcore riffs in there. But then like electronic music, you know. Again, on the internet, I think a lot of people who are kind of deep on these forums and stuff, they like electronic music, stuff like Aphex Twin, you know, things like that, and really interested me. Even like, you know, even more chill stuff like Bonobo was a big artist, like a producer that I really loved. Yeah, and all of these things, it was just a soup of influences. And my way of rebelling was just going as far away from the classical tradition as I could. almost just to piss people off, you know, which I still do to this day. It was just a natural reaction of mine to want to be original. You know, originality is literally the most important thing for an artist to have. You know, if you don't have originality, what do you have? Like, honestly, think about it, man. Like there's nothing that can replace being original, because you can be Bob Dylan and basically not be able to sing, but because you're so pure and unapologetic, then your voice is iconic. Even though you can't go to Juilliard singing as like Bob Dylan does, you know, I don't think so at least. So it was like a counter reaction to the classical world that kind of tells you what to do exactly. I was like, no, like I'm actually gonna choose myself, you know, what I want to do. The moment when it clicked, I went to this competition in my state in Poland, the place I used to live, and you know, it was me. I was like 10, nearly 10 at that point, and other kids, and I've been only playing for 3 months, so this was just like on a whim situation. I wasn't really expecting much, and I won. I won the thing, which still I'm really surprised about. I won the competition. I got first prize, and my parents freaked out. I remember, like, they freaked out more than I did. I didn't even, like, it was crazy to me, but it was like, okay, I won a thing. My parents went nuts. No one expected that. So yeah, that's one of the first memories that I have, which is just like just cooked in my brain. Ever since then, it just kind of keeps going and going, you know? There's no playing an instrument without understanding what it is, you know? Like, if you play a note, if you play a single note, it's not just the action, or like the movement that makes that note work. The reason why this note exists is because my brain decided I'm gonna play D. That's the D. Or, right? Like, everything that you do on an instrument comes from within. It doesn't come from your hands. Like, if your hands were the ones dictating what you do on the instrument, like, chimpanzees would be better guitar players than people because they have more dexterous hands, you know? That's not how it works. So for me, technique is more from your head, like from your mentality. So like, every note should be played with intention. There's an intention, you know, between like changing the key into D major or Phrygian, not Phrygian, like harmonic major, minor. Like, it's more about really understanding what you're doing. Like, if you're on stage or in the studio and you're performing a piece and you don't understand what you're doing, why are you even there? You're just a robot, man. You're AI. If you're performing movements that produce sound, that's not art. It's not music. So yeah, for me, technique obviously was extremely important, and I guess I'm a little known as the like technical guy because I just do a lot of difficult stuff, I guess. But there's an intention behind everything, and there's a style that encompasses the whole thing. Originality and finding your own style is a very gradual process, and it's probably still happening now. You know, it's not something that just kind of happens when you wake up one day and now suddenly you play like Marcin because you found your style. It doesn't really work this way. To me, the thing that I always used to say to people when they ask me about that is that playing to your strengths is a good thing to do when you're searching for your style. When you have a good understanding of fundamentals and what music is in general, then you can kind of start playing to your strengths more and trying to squeeze out as much juice as you can from the things that come naturally to you. Like, rhythm was always a natural thing for me. So really honing in on that and honing in on all of the percussive techniques was just a natural cause of action. And I didn't necessarily spend days and days learning how to alternate pick, you know, like whatever, like Steve Vai or something. Like I don't think I can pick a little, but like, you know, yeah, like that stuff. You see, that's hard. That's so hard for me. Picking this way because I don't use a pick. I just So I didn't really spend time working on that. I spent time working on stuff that for me was natural, and I wanted to make it like more and more and more explosive. So like if you look at a piece like Carmen, here there's like no picking, man. Everything is either tapped or strummed like rasgueado. So flamenco was very natural for me. So all of these let's see, like this, you know, all of these little strums, rasgueados, taps, these things were the ones that were the most simple for me. So I could go as far as I can using these things and just like completely exploding the possibilities of all of these techniques. And the other stuff like the picking and these other, well, I guess it's only picking for me, the techniques which I didn't necessarily hone in on, later you can polish them and use them, like, you know, like at that in Carmen, whatever. But yeah, I guess your own style is just focusing on your strengths and maximizing your own character in your music. I'm not one of the like theory buffs, but I'm also not one of the people who are completely beyond that and you know, they don't even know the position of the notes on a fretboard. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I did go to college. Mom, I went to college very briefly, so you know, I got some education, and it's an intuitive thing. Playing the style that I play, I use many alternate tunings. Like this is D minor open, so D A D F A D. So you would think that theory kind of goes out the window, right? Because oh, like how do I play a C major scale in this tuning? But it's not about replicating scales. Theory is about understanding the relation. Harmony is about understanding the relation between notes, right? So for me, I know every single fret on the fretboard. Doesn't matter which tuning I'm in, as long as I know which one I'm in. I know exactly which note is where, yeah? Doesn't matter, like I can detune the guitar anyway. I can always find a chord that I want. So even though tuning is weird, like if I wanna play a C major chord, here's a C major. That's C major, right? I didn't take me long to find that. And that is theory, because I understand that, okay, this string is F, A, and D, so I got a G, a C, and an E right here. That's a C chord that I can do a little loop to get a weirdo chord, get some Instagram views doing that. So theory is kind of more about understanding how notes and chords relate to each other. It's not about learning scales to me and like learning arpeggios and stuff. That's kind of secondary, you know. That's kind of the shred mentality, which I don't really have. Like I'm not great at like alternate picking or anything. So for me, it's again like when I'm arranging. If I'm arranging something like Mozart. If I'm arranging something like that, what I'm doing is I'm looking at sheet music, right? I'm looking at what Mozart wrote, right? The Requiem. And he didn't write it for acoustic guitar, you know? He wrote it for, I guess originally a choir, right? It's a mass, it's a church piece. So you're looking at a treble clef, a bass clef, maybe sometimes an alto clef. You're looking at the harmonies, and you're trying to understand how you're going to convey that on one instrument and how you're going to do justice to the piece, right? Like I guarantee you that, let's see, like this chord, I assume this chord doesn't really exist in this form in the original. I don't have the sheet music in front of me, but when I look at the theory behind Mozart in that piece, I can see that these notes are going to be the ones that give me the best sort of compromise, the best sort of core of what I need here. And then I can continue, you know, playing the melody. So yeah, I mean, I can talk about these things for ages. Arranging is a fascinating topic, and like trying to arrange music for a different medium is the most fascinating thing you can do. So that's really where theory helps. I don't really think it helps on stage with performance. I don't improvise that much. I'm not one of these jazz cats, you know, but with arranging is a big deal for me. To design an instrument to my own needs is an absolute blessing, you know. It's not something many people can do. This guitar is all made for versatility. This is the perfect guitar for a player who does a little bit of everything, you know, and is a guitar and an instrument that allows you to play percussively and allows you to do all of these, you know, hard-hitting things, but also allows you to do everything else. And like, you know, I did before, like you can play very sort of classically, like you can, even if I play just with my fingers, apoyando it's called. It almost sounds like a nylon, right? It's like almost gets this like warm quality, but then obviously if I'm like now it's steel, so it's a very versatile instrument. And we did this thing where the body gets a bit wider here, and so there's much more room for the warmth to come out. It's still pretty slim, so you can move around. The scratch pad is a very unique element, like it's maybe the first thing that you see when you look at this signature. I mean, what can I don't need to say anything. It's self-explanatory what it does. To me, D'Addario always has been the prime string company that's just being frank. Like there's always the big boy in town, and like it's D'Addario. It's nothing else to say. And when I learned that D'Addario actually produced packs, like not even custom packs, just packs of strings, which allow you to have the lighter trebles and the thicker D-chord bass. It just goes to show you that like these people care about more niche requests and more niche needs. And then even back when I was not using D'Addario, I would be using other strings, but then everything else I was using on my guitar was D'Addario, Like I would be using the tuner right here, which was D'Addario. Like this, the only tuner I ever used, man. It's this one, right? Or like my tech winding up my strings using D'Addario. So it like almost felt like it was inevitable at some point. And it's just really good that at a time in my life where I'm growing the most, I'm doing the most new things, experimenting with different sounds. I just released a new single playing on 3 different guitars. This is the right time to partner with a company which is versatile, and can really support a global artist just as much as they can support a amateur hobby player. It's a full-scale company, So yeah, it's a great thing. Again, I'm not a guitar nerd, so listen to me talk. The packaging, dude, the packaging. Every D'Addario product is like the sleekest packaging. It's like Apple. It's like Apple in guitar products. It's like a sleek thing, which I love. Before Access, I always thought that it was very, very hard to find strings for a percussive player which would last a long time. There was always an anxiety of mine is that most of these brands, they don't really make a product which can support a player like me. Like if you do this like 5 times per show, and then like whatever, like do all of these, the rasgados, all of these things, the swipes. These things are pretty heavy duty, on like hard hitting on the strings. So the Excess were I think a very good move. D'Addario is a very good niche to support, I think, as a company. Is the people who actually play hard, and actually play a lot, because those are the people who seek companies which respect the grind. And yeah, it's a great thing. And really, again, the thing that endeared me was the fact that the treble and the bass can have a real nice distribution and you're not limited. Like, I hate limitations, I hate compromises, and with the excess you really don't need to compromise on anything. When I'm playing like festivals, which I'm doing now in the summer, and the sets are like an hour long, and I swap guitars and stuff, and we travel, you don't even need to change strings at all. Like, I could go maybe like 5 shows on these festivals, big festivals, like 3,000 people and everything, like big, proper things, and the strings just keep sounding the same. Like, I don't hear any difference. And if I don't hear a difference, then I don't think the audience will hear a difference anyway. I've not had a single time during touring this year where a string broke on stage. That's insane for me. Like, before D'Addario, and this is a true story, I'm not trying to be sweet here, this is a true story. Before D'Addario, last year, I was touring China, I had a string break like 3 times on a 9-show tour. And here I am this year, I played 23 in Europe, then 3 in Turkey, and then like I played like 30 plus shows so far, like proper hour plus long shows. Not a single string broke. What does that say? I use the humidity packs. That's a new thing for me, and it was a very fortunate thing because my luthier that I have in Warsaw, in Poland, actually told me that the action of my guitar was getting higher and higher because it was really dry in my apartment, supposedly. So I had to do something to fix that, because I don't want to give my guitar to the luthier every month, obviously. Lo and behold, D'Addario has a product for that, and now when I travel, I have this nice pack inside the guitar, and yeah, hasn't happened since. Didn't need to give it to the luthier since. It is fascinating to think about how my nationality impacted my career. I am Polish, I still live in Poland, which for some reason surprises many people. Everyone thinks I live abroad. But there is a community here in Poland which partly was supportive, partly was not supportive of me. Frankly speaking, it was always a journey. On one hand, trying to stay true to my roots and stay true to the community that helped me become who I am, and I have massive respect for my teacher, like I said, Mr. Pico, from my hometown. It's a massive respect to him. However, on the other hand, also it's always this mentality that when someone tries to go beyond your country, that it's, I don't know, that they're arrogant or something. I don't know why there's this notion in the air, especially within the classical community here in Poland, that going outside the borders is somehow a bad thing, or you shouldn't do that. I don't know why that is, but it's good to try and change these beaten paths. The lamest comment you can give to an artist is, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing that." Do you hear yourself? Yeah, it's always been a part of what I do. Always, ever since the first video I did on YouTube, I think it was Toxicity from System of a Down, the cover of mine. It keeps happening where people have this preconceived notion of what playing the guitar is, and they can't open their heads a bit and try to actually appreciate a new style. But what that tells me is only that it's good, because I'm reaching new people. I'm reaching people who have never seen this sort of style before, and it's a beautiful thing, because now the percussive guitar with me, I'm playing at places like Fuji Rock or Montreux Jazz Festival, or Montreal Jazz Festival. These are very mainstream outlets for musicians, and this style doesn't usually get this sort of possibility, this sort of opportunity to appear on these really big stages, So even though there's a fight always between the purists and the new wave, I think it's a good thing, and I think it just says that this is the next big thing, The past year basically has been a whirlwind. That's a really good word to use. The amount of things that can change in a person's life in such a short amount of time is is pretty staggering, to be honest. I released my first real album last year in September. It's called Dragon Harmony. To me, this is the first true, complete work that I released, you know, because everything else was in bits and pieces, like a video on YouTube, you know, or a single on Spotify, or a video on TikTok, or a collab with someone, but there was nothing major, right? There was no complete big piece of work. And this album gave me an opportunity to do that and to kind of legitimize myself as an artist, not just a content creator, you know, like a true musician. And I think it achieved the goal, and with it came touring, which is a whole other whirlwind of its own. Like, I try to explain to my friends sometimes, like, you know, they're not artists, just normal guys. I try to explain to them the reality of touring and what your life is when you're a touring artist, like over 60% of the year, let's say, and it's impossible. Like, it's impossible to explain to a lay person what it means to be on the road and like the ups and downs of that sort of life. It's just a crazy thing, but it's really been a blessing, and it's, again, like I'm proud of what I have achieved so far, but even more so I'm proud of how far this style, the percussive style, has gone, you know. It's this is really the thing that I want to do, is to show the world that this way of playing the guitar it's not a gimmick, you know, it's not a trick, it's a legitimate, true way of expressing yourself on the guitar, and it deserves a spot in like the echelons, you know, of guitar and of guitar styles. This is my mission, and like this year has been an absolute game changer for that. Absolute game changer. Like, every move that I've been doing since last May was beginning of the tour, basically, in Japan. Every move that I've been making and that my team has been making were kind of the opposite of what you would expect from a fingerstyle, you know, I hate that word, fingerstyle player. So I'm playing standing shows, you know, I'm playing real like rock venues, rock clubs. I'm collaborating with mainstream artists, and I'm doing my best to work with people who are opening doors and not like already inside like the room with me, you know. Yeah, man, I'm trying to make music now which is much more mainstream and much more like it connects people. It pops the bubble, it pops the fingerstyle guitar bubble, and it really opens the world's eyes onto this style. So it's been a real blessing, both the album, both the touring. So far we've toured Europe this year, 23 shows in Europe, all but one sold out. Birmingham, I gotta come back, man. I did Turkey, 3 shows. I'm doing a lot of festivals now in the summer, big, like, for me, playing in front of 3,000 people, this big stage, everyone's like vibing out. Man, it feels great. And then last year was a bit of Asia, China, a lovely place for me. Such great people and great place to play guitar. Japan, phenomenal. Korea, Taiwan. Man, all of these places just are becoming close to my heart, you know, and wouldn't be possible without the album, which is a real reason to kind of make a statement, and without the community, you know. My absolute favorite show that I played in my life, and I have an answer straight up, it only happened 2 weeks ago. So it was the beginning of July. I played at Montreal Jazz Festival. It was a sold-out show, it was like 1,300 people there. Beautiful theater, beautiful lighting design. I felt like I touched God, dude. Like, on stage, the Montreal Jazz Fest, it was like nothing could go wrong. You understand? Like, this is the thing that's hard to explain to people who aren't touring artists. There's just nights where there's something happens where there's literally nothing that can go wrong. Nothing can ruin the night. And in Montreal was that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, I got 5 standing ovations, man. It was like, what a night. Yeah, so that was a great venue, great crowd. Quebec in general, the whole area in Canada has been so kind to me. Tokyo, I adore playing in Tokyo. Hey, Warsaw, my town, love it. Paris as well. Yeah, I mean everything's great. Like touring is great. You know, if you can balance a bunch of stuff, then really can be a big blessing. So this year is gonna still be big. Still no strings snapped using the Dario this year. I didn't like that. I'm gonna get it perfect, okay? Do you mind?
Yeah.
Like I want it to be perfect, man.
Yeah, just keep rolling.
You can even put that in, like at the end or something. Like I'm gonna get it perfect. You understand? Perfect. Nothing less. No.